And I'm going to read this note right here. It says, notice is given, is hereby given that a special meeting of the Milpitas Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness Commission that will be held Thursday, March 18, 7 p.m. The Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness Commission meeting is held via teleconference, Zoom, webinar only. So no physical meeting space. You may watch the commission meeting without providing public comment by accessing it via links below, which is www.facebook.com/City of Milpitas / or on YouTube. And this is also on web streaming, live streaming.
I'm going to widen it out just a little bit and make it
I'm
print
reading it
bigger.
on the notes here.
Yeah, well, and
All right.
yeah, there we go. That makes it more readable.
Okay, I'm done there. So if I can scroll up a little bit. Okay, public comment instructions. All public comments may be provided during. Okay, the Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness Commission meeting by first registering for the Zoom meeting in advance by providing email address and a name. So here's the link on the screen. It's ci-milpitas-cA-gov.zoom.us /webinar/register/WN and so on.
Those are forward slashes. Those are forward slashes.
Oh.
Backslash leans the other way.
Thank you. Okay, a link will be sent to you to join the commission meeting in order to give comments. All registered meeting attendees who wish to speak must click on the raise hand icon when the chair calls for public comments. If participating by calling in, dial *9 to use the hand raised feature. And when you are called upon, hit *6 to unmute your phone. Your phone number will display in the live meeting. Staff will call the speaker to begin. All comments provided shall be limited to 3 minutes or less as determined by the chair. All members of the public will be limited to 1 comment per agenda item and 1 comment for non-agenda items. The online written comment form previously used is no longer be available for public comment. And here is the agenda. Let's call this meeting to order. Don, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay, everybody stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to this republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Don.
Sure.
All right, Tony, can we do the roll call?
Yes, give me 1 moment, please. Okay, I have Alex Bittenkart, unless you are on the phone, I have you as absent this evening. Let me see who our participants are. So we have Han, we have Dawn, we have Paul. Let me see if anyone called in. Okay, and Joe Nichols will be seated as an alternate, or excuse me, seated as a commissioner tonight.
Yes.
Yep, okay, we're good.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Really quickly before we do that, Councilmember Dominguez might be a little late this evening. She's tied up with something. So she wanted to adjust the agenda to put her presentation at the end of it so she can make sure she gets in here in time to do that. So that's the only change I have.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda with the changes?
So moved.
And who was
Second.
that? Who do they have on the move, the first?
Oh,
Who
that
made the
was me.
motion?
That
Joe,
was me.
okay, thanks, Joe.
No problem.
And
Joe and Don
Clendenin.
second?
Yep.
Okay, very good, thank you. I need a roll call for votes, I believe, so I'm gonna call Han, approve,
Yes.
Paul, approve, Joe,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
okay, and I think that's all our commissioners for tonight. Vicky Young, by the way, has put in her resignation as alternate, so we are getting very slim down here. Okay, yeah, go ahead and move on to approval of minutes.
Okay, approval of minutes. Is there a second? I'm sorry, is there a motion?
Motion to approve, this is Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Second.
Motion by Paul, second by Joe.
By Don, second by Don or Joe?
Joe.
Joe, got it. Thank you so much for correcting me on that. I'll roll call again. Han,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes,
Don,
Yes.
and Joe.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 7, public forum. Those interested are invited to address the commission on any subject not on tonight's agenda orally via Zoom webinar. Instructions were above. Speakers may provide their name and city of residence for the record, and comments may be limited to 3 minutes or less at the discretion of the chair or vice chair. As an item not listed on the agenda, no response is required from the city staff or the commission, and no action can be taken. Tony, is there any public comments?
Nothing for public forum that I'm aware of. There's nobody on the line for that.
Oh, okay. Moving on to announcements.
I do not have any announcements. I think I agendized all of my topics for tonight, so I'm going to pass on that unless anyone else has announcements. Otherwise, we do have a presentation tonight.
Any announcements? Anyone else? If not, let's go on to the presentation.
Okay, very good. So I am going to have Fanny Yu from our, I apologize, I believe she's from engineering. She's one of those that got hired during COVID, so I've not had the pleasure of actually meeting her face to face. I'm not quite sure what department she's out of. Fanny, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself, and you, Ron, I think we'll work on the presentation with you and provide the presentation to all of us this evening.
Yeah, can everyone hear me right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Fanny Yu. I am an associate civil engineer with the engineering department. I'm also the project manager working on updating the city's trails, pedestrian, and bicycle master plan. Thanks for providing me this opportunity to present to you an overview of the project as well as the public draft plan. Next slide, please. Now, this is a long-range planning document which identifies potential future improvements for trails, bicycles, and pedestrian facilities. By going through this process, improvements are more likely to be implemented because it shows community and staff support for projects. It also provides a vision and action plan to improve active transportation, such as biking and walking. We also want to show support for connectivity and access to destinations. We also want to integrate trails and biking to and from the new BART station, as well as other transit options.
Yeah.
We also want to, everything okay? Yeah. We also want to improve safety and provide comfort and ease to use active transportation for all ages and abilities. Next slide, please. Here are the main contents of the plan. I would like to highlight a few of these in the presentation. Our process started by exploring the existing infrastructure and programs of the city, and then we did an analysis based on gaps and needs of the community. We then provided a web map that offered people the opportunity to place lines and dots, and we asked them questions like, where are your points of interest? Where are you trying to go? Are there any areas or routes that pose a challenge to you? Then we took all that feedback and did another analysis and provided recommendations for improvements. We then went back out to the public to gauge input on whether these were the right types of solutions and how important certain solutions were to them. From there, we created a list of priority improvements and discussed potential policies and programs. And then we completed the public draft plan, which is now ready for public review. Next slide, please. Now, as the city continues to grow and new transportation technologies are introduced, we should also explore how this growth affects our connectivity and our relationship with transportation. Now, the last trails and bicycle master plans were adopted in 1997 and 2009, respectively. I'm sure many people are aware that a lot has changed since that time. Now is a great opportunity to update these two documents to reflect what is here now. Previously, we were working on these plans separately, but we soon realized that the trails, pedestrians, and bicycle networks relied so heavily on each other, it just made sense to combine them all into one cohesive plan. Next slide, please. In terms of what's new from the previously adopted plans, we have specific considerations for a pedestrian network, which is something that wasn't included in either of the previous plans. This will provide a comprehensive consideration for active modes of transportation. The plan will also reflect the changing conditions within Milpitas, including population growth, employment opportunities, and the addition of a new BART station and potential regional connections. We also did a further analysis of the previously proposed trails based on changing conditions and standards and created a feasible list of these improvements. We also want to explore bike and scooter share, which has quickly been changing the landscape of readily available transportation throughout the Bay Area. Next slide, please. Now, through the various public engagement efforts, we've learned a few key themes. There's limited connectivity in today's active transportation network. Many people experience major barriers to travel, such as major roadways like the freeways, Calaveras Boulevard, Montague Expressway, and Great Mall Parkway. With a growing population and increased job opportunities, there's an increasing demand on the transportation system itself. And with the new BART station, many people see this as a new travel opportunity, and people want to know, how do I get there safely? There's also a desire for improved safety, increased travel options, and improved connections to destinations. Next slide, please. Now, based on all the feedback we've received, we've developed multiple networks for trails and bicycles. This map is probably the best overview map showing how these two networks rely on each other. Fortunately, Milpitas has a very robust sidewalk and pedestrian network, and there are not many sidewalk gaps. So we don't show the full network here because it would just be too much information on one map. The recommendations shown here are based on the key themes I just mentioned earlier. We want to keep in mind, we want to find low stress connected networks. How can we help people of all ages and abilities get to where they want to go? We also want to maximize use of existing right-of-way and identify near-term opportunities. These types of projects are a little bit easier to deliver as opposed to projects that require major roadway reconfigurations. And then we have the regional perspective. We want to make connectivity and continuity with San Jose and Fremont. We also want to enhance multimodal travel opportunities, including connections to transit. Next slide, please. Now in the plan, we identify spot improvements as well. Most of these are intersection improvements or trail access improvements. There's a multitude of improvements you can employ, such as signal timing, upgrade to curb ramps, high visibility crosswalks, green bicycle boxes, trailheads, and wayfinding signs, just to name a few. These improvements are implemented through the city's capital improvement program and are built providing there's funding available. For example, the most common way bicycle lanes are implemented are when we repave streets and we can install new striping. All these improvements should be assessed based on location and community needs and will need further design in the future. Next slide, please. Now, as mentioned earlier, bike and scooter share are still fairly new to the city of Milpitas. These types of options are very popular in metropolitans like San Francisco and New York, and they've quickly found their way throughout the entire Bay Area. It's really easy for anyone with a phone to download an app, scan a bike or scooter, and use it immediately. But in order to prepare Milpitas for these new technologies, we really need to look at preparing a few guidelines that will guide future policies. Mainly, we want to focus those policies on safety, education, enforcement, and maintenance policies. These guidelines will help us select a vendor that is the right partner for Milpitas. The plan offers an opportunity to explore a pilot program, and we've identified a few locations that would be a great start for the pilot. We currently recommend fewer locations for the first year in order to work on any of the kinks of the policy, and it's recommended to reassess and expand the program after 1 year. Next slide, please. Now, the public draft plan is currently live and available for review and comments. We'll be providing the link through various web posts, social media posts, pretty much anywhere I can get it to be posted. I also encourage everyone to share the link with their friends and families. Your comments and feedback really do matter and will drive the direction of these improvements for Milpitas. We'll also have a virtual open house, which will be a condensed version of the plan. So it's a little bit easier to digest all the information. You'll be able to submit questions, answer surveys, polls. You can also find the same link in what is shown right here. We'll also be holding a public meeting on April 13th, so the public can interact with the project team directly. The registration link can also be found on the same website. Now, if all goes according to plan, the plan should be ready for adoption in early June of this year. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions or comments?
I have one comment. I didn't hear anything about the buttons to get the walk light to go, because sometimes they're set in, and bicyclists want to go right down the curb line, if you will, but you got to go and drive over that the ramp thing on the sidewalk there to get to the button. And having a post out there that's just strictly for the bicyclists or something like that would be kind of and where it seems appropriate.
Yeah, so let me just make a comment on that. So we currently have, in some areas of Milpitas, we currently have bicycle detection loops. So it's the same technology as like detecting vehicles so that the light changes. So we're hoping to implement more of these bicycle loop detectors at intersections. So there's no need for a button. As soon as the bicycle like rolls up into an intersection, into like a designated lane, the sensor will sense them and it'll change the light for them.
Okay. So that's next to the curb, not out into the traffic area, is what you're saying.
Right. Except for locations where there's like a dedicated right turn lane, for example, it would be next to that. Or if there's no dedicated right turn lane, then it would be right next to the curb.
Sure.
Any further questions? Joe, looked like you had something to say.
Yeah, just in terms of getting funding for some of the stuff with this, I got two questions actually for you, Fanny. Are we working with like AC Transit and VTA to get funding for this, or is this strictly coming from the city?
So there's multiple funding opportunities. The plan also discusses like grant opportunities. We can also get funding from VTA through Measure B. There will be some city funding involved. We can also look into other grants with like the Open Space District, VTA again, and then also with like county and state funding as well.
Okay. And then my second question. So going back to the bicycle and scooter sharing, you guys are looking at that like one of the providers that's already out there, like Lime or
Lyft or
Uber Bike. Is that kind of what the direction that would be going?
Yeah, so we are looking to find a vendor, but again, we want to set up these guidelines and policies first. What we want to do is set up like these boundaries with these vendors. We want to put out, hey, we want to be able to access statistics. We want you to be able to educate the riders. We want to put these requirements on the vendor and then have vendors bid on the project so that they can provide those services for the city.
Okay. Now, once that bidding process is done, are we gonna, just for the early stages, are we gonna do multiple, or are we gonna do one single exclusive vendor? Are we gonna have maybe one or two or more?
Right now, the policy or the guidelines that are mentioned in the plan, we are recommending one at a time just to work out any of those kinks. Some providers, for example, some vendors will be able to work with you. So if something doesn't work out for the first 3 months, we can kind of reach back out to them like, hey, can you adjust your app to do this instead of that? Like, we're seeing a lot of people abandon scooters and bikes in non-designated areas. What is your plan of action to address these issues?
Yeah, I think their typical thing is they've got a GPS on them, which tells where it is. And then the guys go out and collect them and then go back and recharge them, put them out on the next day. The other thing that is going on the sidewalks, because I've seen this downtown San Jose, and they're just going zinging down the sidewalks there with people walking on the sidewalks versus, they got a dedicated lane out there for them on the street. I mean, it's striped for it, and yet they don't use it.
Right. So that's one of the things that we also mentioned in the guidelines. We want to recommend that the app educates riders and users that they need to follow the road rules. Sidewalks are not the place for scooters and bicyclists. They need to be on the roadway in the designated lane.
Now, kind of piggybacking off of what Dawn just said, Fanny, that I assume there's going to be some kind of enforcement mechanism. Like let's just say Milpitas, there's a Milpitas police officer. He sees somebody riding on the sidewalk. what would be the enforcement mechanism for that if, you know?
Right, so
If-
that's something we mentioned in the guidelines as well. We don't, for the plan itself does not set up like exact guidelines right now. We just make recommendations for it. So we do require some enforcement, and unfortunately we will require some Milpitas police force to do those enforcements for the community, right? But then we also want to work with the vendor or the app to say like, you know, if we find a user, you know, is there a way to like dock their account a little bit to, you know, make sure that they follow these rules and guidelines. So there's multiple ways that we can approach it, but right now, you know, there's no set policy in place. The plan really just identifies recommendations that we've kind of worked with other cities. We've asked them like, what works for you? What doesn't work for you? What are the best practices for moving forward with these vendors?
Okay.
It sounds like something not so much police officers, but maybe the, I'm trying to think of what they call them now, but they're the ones that go out and do the house checks and things like that, that they could do that stuff.
Yeah, I know that we have some community officers that might be able to do that work, but again, nothing's set in stone right now. We do make recommendations in the plan though.
Sure.
Great. Any other questions for Fanny?
Paul
Yeah,
Smith.
just real quickly. So the public comment period opened on February 2nd. How are we making the public aware of the plan and their ability to comment?
Yeah, so just like I'm presenting to you at this commission, I presented at all the other commission meetings. I'm also sending an email trying to get something out with the school district as well. I've also sent emails to employers to kind of send this flyer out to their employees. I'm also going through the newspaper ads to post an ad there. Yeah, pretty much. And anyone who's reached out to me or signed up for our email list, I've emailed them out as well. I've also asked some colleagues of mine who also have other email lists for like, such as the park master plan and the general plan, to also email out to those people as well. So I'm doing everything possible. We're also doing like social media posts. There's a couple of Facebook posts, Twitter, Nextdoor. If you have any other recommendations, I would love to hear it. I'm really going anywhere that's accepting my link at this point.
Hey, Tony, real quick, do you have Fanny's email?
Yes.
Okay. We'll talk offline. That way I can email her, because that would be something we could present to a lot of the Spring Valley guys at our next training, just so that they're aware too, because a lot of them live here in Milpitas. So I don't know if you know, just have the information with where they can go to review the plan and stuff. That I think that would be great.
That's great. I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for presenting, Fanny. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank you,
much,
Fanny,
Fanny.
for the presentation. Who just said something?
Oh, I just said thank you to Fanny for coming to us, and providing the presentation. And hopefully I will meet you someday.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds like
And
there's
the
nothing else.
recommendation, the recommendation here is to accept the presentation.
And I will document we've received it.
Okay,
I think we're good.
good, great, thank you.
Okay.
Right, moving on to work plan report. So we have Neighbor Fest on hold. And the next item we have is Technology and Collaboration Initiative. That's with Joe and I. Do you want
So
to Joe?
here's what I'm thinking is Joe chokes. Are you okay there, Joe?
When you said Joe, he went, oh.
Very timely, yes. Well, let me, before we get into each one of them yet,
Okay.
I know we're in a really strict, weird circumstance, so it does make it very hard to move forward on this. And I'm just thinking about this so we can get some traction on these task items. At this point in time, have any of you guys moved forward with any of the task items that you are assigned to? And that's okay if you haven't. I don't anticipate it because I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I
here's
have
kind
not.
of, okay, and that's okay. I was anticipating that because again, I haven't heard much from you guys regarding them. So I assumed we're kind of just we're kind of in a holding pattern with COVID keeping us indoors. But here's what I'm thinking. Maybe we can plan a couple meetings where I can meet with Han and Joe, and then I can meet with Dawn and Alec, which I need to get in touch with him. And then I have Paul and Jonathan on the business emergency preparedness plan. Why don't I set up meetings at the 3 of whoever the group is, myself and the 2 commissioners? Why don't we kind of sit down and plan like a Zoom that we can kind of powwow together that, okay, how can we work in these circumstances to get some progress or some traction moving forward at this time, even if it's just putting together our individual action plans to move us in when we hopefully get vaccinated and we can actually go back to normal circumstances. So we do have something to report out come December.
I think that would be a great idea, Tony.
Okay.
I think the simple on my side, because I get to mail the PD and neighborhood watch, is who do we contact there? You know, who's in charge of that now as far as their staff?
Captain Morales or Chief Hernandez, I saw both of you. Would one of you be able to tell, is it Sergeant Speckenhoyer who's in charge of PCR, CRC or something like that?
Hey, Tony, this is Frank Morales. Yeah, it is Sergeant Jason Speckenhoyer,
Okay.
Who's in charge of our police community relations.
Perfect. I will get them in touch with Speckenhoyer, and maybe we can get a meeting going with Alec, you guys, and myself initially to get you guys started, and then you guys can work together with Jason on any things they have going on that you guys could have facilitated. So, okay, so I don't want to miss anything on this, but if we don't have movement on anything, that's totally fine. I just want to put out there that I'll connect with each one of you guys to get a meeting set up with the teams, and we'll kind of just put together our own individual work plans for each one of them.
That's a great idea.
Okay.
So we'll wait to hear from you then.
Yeah, I'll shoot everybody out emails probably next week, and we'll get meetings set up in the coming weeks.
Okay.
Perfect. So yeah, unless there's something else to be said on that, we can go ahead and move on to liaison reports.
Okay. Councilmember Dominguez, is she on yet or not?
I have not seen her join on yet. Let me look one more time. I don't see her on just yet. Let's we'll go ahead and keep her report down at the end like we've moved on the agenda. And then Han, why don't you go ahead and get us started with district report?
Well, the good news is kids will be able to go back to online, in-person learning, but that's for kindergarten to 6th grade and 9th grade only.
What happened to the junior hires?
Say that again?
What happened to junior hires? Because you went 6th grade and then you jumped to 9th grade.
Yes, junior high will only do in person, but for targeted support group.
Okay.
So they will continue their online learning. And that will start April 7th. For K to 6, they will start April 1st, and 9th grade will be on April 1st. The other good news is, well, let me stick back to students are going back in person learning. It is required for the students to get health screening twice a month, and they have to submit those screening prior to the school days. And the district is receiving $16 million, $573,000 from state for the Mabel Matos second phase construction. So that's my report for the district.
Thank you so much, Han. Sorry, I'm writing notes.
No problem.
Okay. Any questions for Han? Okay. Let me just make sure we don't have any panelists or attendees. Okay. For OES reports, so as mentioned, I had sent out the emergency operations plan. I don't know where the 330 pages came from. I think really what it is the whole caption document, which will be all the annexes that attach to it, but I just don't know where the 330 came up from. So everyone does have it. It's on the little drive that I provided you all. It's about 82, 95 pages, something like that, somewhere in there. I'm still taking comments in the comment period. I'm going to be finalizing the draft of it, hopefully tomorrow through the weekend. I want to work on it to get it to Chief Maloon, and then that way he can go ahead and have it ready for city management, so we can hopefully move forward for adoption this spring. It'll just be the EOP. I call it the Bible document because it's kind of the solid document. It's a solid document that defines how things go and who does what. But the annexes themselves will then be defined afterwards as we progress through. So for example, right now we have a hot weather annex in draft form, a cold weather annex in draft form, public safety power shutdown annex in draft form. And the reason I don't intend to take those necessarily as, I want them separated from the Bible document, as I call it, is because I think those are going to be living documents that change and reflect what's going on and when we drill and what do we need to, so we don't have to keep going back to council to make minor edits to the document. So every 5 years or so, we'll go through a re-session of it and everything will get readopted again as we provide updates to it. So that's kind of the plan. I want to let you all know. So if there's any comments you do have on it, I know you may not have gotten through it all. It's very, very interesting reading. It's very heavy reading to get through, but if you continue to go through it and you want to shoot me an email this weekend, I'm open for suggestions on it, or even if it just is an idea for an annex that needs to be adopted or put into it, excuse me. Otherwise, yeah, we'll move forward with that. And then we will also go through an open comment session with council for 30 days. So even if you don't get back to me next week, we have a 30-day window that comments can come into council for it. So that's sort of that with the EOP. Any questions on that?
Are we gonna get to see any of those annexes as they come out, or how's that? Gonna
Yeah, I don't see why not. I don't see an issue with it. I will talk with Chief Maloon about it, but I don't see an issue with it. I'll just have to kind of make sure it's okay. If in the event that there's any, I don't want to say confidential, classified information, just because it's a emergency response, we might have to keep some of it withheld, just because it might be something that's our operations and we don't want to expose that for safety reasons.
Right.
But yeah, for the most part, I don't think many of the annexes will have that. It's really stuff like addressing access functional needs, language barriers. I have a weird extreme concern about youth that are left home alone after school. We anticipate parents coming home, but disaster happens, and what do we do with those kids? Those are the ones that make me really nervous. So it's kind of like, I did an outreach to the community and I hosted 2 meetings with the community, reaching out to many different sectors, the Indian Community Center, some of the churches, medical field I got in touch with, large industry, small industry, animal services, I got in touch with them and really collaborated with I think I probably got in total about 20 people that might have been a part of the collaboration project on it, just to make sure that we really reached out to those sectors that either not represented very well in terms of our plan, that we need to have a special plan for them for whatever reason that might be. So, and again, if you have ideas on there's something that I haven't reached out to, then please let me know. It may be something that we have and it's on my list and we just haven't gotten to the actual document itself.
Just kind of an add to that with the children issue and being home alone, that's where the Map Your Neighborhood / Neighbor Fest come in, because now you've got at least somebody there, in the neighborhood that's going to at least take care of, we'll say, some of the kids, not everybody, but it's trying to push that out more and saying, what about those kids? What about the elderly person, sort of thing? Because they're all kind of an issue because they're left hanging.
I do feel like once we get some organization to the annexes of themselves, it will also boost the programs that we do have to go out there and kind of re-energize them in the community once we're able to go face to face with people again. So I'm excited about all of it. It's a big project to go on, but it's a really important document to have. Okay. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to move on to the next topic. So I have the CERT program update. As far as CERT members, a lot of exciting news. However, I am very, very excited to let you guys know we will be getting some new caches. I had mentioned previously, I think, about the Connex box project that I've been working on. Mm-hmm. So through this downtime of COVID, we've had 2 of our the little trailers, mobile unit sheds, broken into.
Wells Fargo.
Yeah, they're like the Wells cargo containers. Yes, and they just were without wheels. So I think they just run their life course and they're no longer holding up to the abuse of vandals, unfortunately. So unfortunately, we have had 2 of them totally pillaged out, where we've lost all of our supplies in them. I think I previously mentioned this, but anyway, as a result of that, I'm taking what funds I have this year and applying probably a significant portion of my budget to buying 4 Connex boxes. The first round of 4 are going to be installed at Serrano Park, which is over off of the other side of 880, which I call the islands. I kind of call us on the other part of 880 the mainland, and then there's the islands out there. And I worry very much about the island folks out there because in their situation, in the event of fire, rig is over on the other side of 880. If there's a catastrophic disaster, they may very well not be able to get back to the islands on that side. So it's extremely important to me to get a great CERT team together out there. We had a lot of traction and motivation moving forward on it. It kicked off with a lot of energy, and we had a team pretty much formed. I mean, it wasn't a huge team, but we had a team formed, and then things happened, and circumstances just are what they are. So I do hope that bringing the supplies to those folks will sort of energize them to get a part of the program and be a part of it, because they really need to understand it could be a while before help comes. They really have to help one another, and that's why I want to put the supplies out there for them to give them that ability to do the best they can with it. The other one's going in at Spangler. Spangler is notoriously broken into, even before my tenure here. Spangler always got broken into. So we're putting a new one in Spangler, and then we'll be putting a new one in Senate, because that was recently broken into, and that one has a history of break-ins as well. I think it's just a very quiet neighborhood, especially at nighttime when it happens. So there's not a ton of traffic that goes through there. And then the last one is going in at Burnett, because that one actually got vandalized and was essentially pillaged too. So actually, yeah, we have 3 of them that are vacant, really. It's Spangler, Burnett, and Zenker, or not Zenker, excuse me.
Yeah.
Spangler, Burnett, and Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a new one out at Serrano. So I'm excited about the movement forward on this. We have security locks on them, or the security protection of the locks, the lockbox type. So you can't cut, you have to reach up and do the dials and whatnot. So yeah, I'm hoping this will be a really great opportunity to revamp some of the caches and get some new supplies in there and take care of everybody. Any questions? Okay.
In terms of getting those resupplied, is that just coming from your budget, Tony, or are you trying to get donations? Or
I'm always open to donations, especially this last year with the budget cuts that have gone in. It's going to make it significantly harder. All of us in all city departments took cuts, and so my division's budget was cut as well. It was already small as it was, which makes it a little challenging in years like this. So we'll do the best we can with the circumstances that we have. It might be next year we replace more Connex boxes. It might be instead we buy the supplies for the Connex boxes that have already been placed. So it's, I don't know. It's trying to figure out how to take care of everybody on a small budget. But yeah, always open to donations for things. So.
If you could do me a favor, once we're tonight, shoot me a list of what of the supplies you're looking at for each Connex box, and I'll see what I can reach out to some of the organizations we deal with.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, very good.
Stuff donated up the hill.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, they'd be willing to help out with the CERT stuff.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Got to thinking just in that, is a solar panel on the roof, but have it such that we can put it on the roof, but it's stored inside. And I've seen some folding ones that are like 100, 120 watts. They're, kind of size when they're folded up. And you can put that up there to recharge cell phones and things like that.
Yeah. Do you know the cost are on those? I've never seen those before.
They're about $100, for 100 watts sort of thing. Even the solid panel.
Yeah. Because I've looked at those for other things, but it all depends on, the size of the physical size, and then what type of wattage and everything.
Yeah. Definitely something to be looked at into the future, because I think just being able to have the recharging stations for the cell phones is critical to what everybody does, just because those little radios just don't cut it. So yeah, especially out in the Serrano area, because the buildings are so big. So
and,
that would be great.
And then kind of going off of the communication thing for CERT, I'm actually working with a friend of mine who volunteers with the CERT team up in Fremont, and they are working on their going through a trial with some new tech. They're called GoTenna Pros. They kind of like a mesh network, and they use your cell phone, allow you to send SMS messages. So I have a friend of mine, he's also a ham radio guy. He's testing it out with a bunch of the CERT guys up in Fremont. With him to see if maybe that would be something for us to deploy throughout Milpitas for our CERT teams. At least that way, they can communicate with each other, not necessarily through voice, but through SMS.
Text. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's very cool. Yeah, I'd be very interested to see the technology on it. My counterpart in Fremont just recently left for another position, so I don't know who's filled it yet. So I haven't been in touch yet. But yeah, that would be great to kind of get some information on that.
And Tony, what is the budget that you're looking at?
God, it's been a bit since I looked into my budget. I think at one point before the cuts took place, I was only at 55 for the year, I think. And so now they've cut, and I want to say maybe I'm down to 40, but again, don't quote me on it. I'm not sure if I have the correct number on that. But yeah, it's a small budget. It's probably one of the smallest in the cities, but it is just me. So yeah, we do what we can with our dollars for sure.
All right. I can work on that too.
Okay. Otherwise, yeah, no further on the CERT program at this time. We're continuing to just do online training, and I put opportunities out to folks every couple of weeks. I end up usually with a list of classes that come up, and I throw them out to everybody to see if they, are interested in, or everyone needs to keep up their CERT skills. So everyone's required to do at least one training, but it's the opportunity to get in some extra training since we're all kind of sitting at home for the most part, some of us, and get some training in what we can. Okay.
Yeah, but Tony, you have a tentative date when possibility of going back to the in-person CERT training classes at all yet?
No idea. Yeah, I personally am thinking probably fall when all the vaccinations are dispersed and we seem to see a downturn in the amount of cases, but it's all subject to how we're all doing in our jurisdictional area and the county and what they'll allow. So yeah, I have no plans on the 2021 calendar, put it that way.
Well, if you look at like with the churches and all that stuff, for indoor, it's 20%. Now, if you go outdoor, now you can have more. So having the training possibly outdoors and kind of limit the number, at least we can train maybe 10 to 15-ish, something like that kind of number outdoors.
The challenges I find with that, I'm not totally dismissing the idea, but the challenges I find with that is keeping that 6 feet of distance apart, because our stuff, search and rescue, everything's so close quarters, because that's just the nature of what you guys train for. So that's what makes me a little bit nervous at this point.
Well, what you're saying there is more the field side of it versus just the classroom stuff. Yeah.
And I just think that having the field exercise alongside the classroom ingrains it so much more, especially when you have someone who's not going to do it again, maybe for another 6 months to a year. So I think it's so much more important to get I think the hands-on is more important than the classroom training, but we have to do the classroom training.
Yeah.
I think people learn better when they go hands-on with things and they figure out how to do them. So yeah, 2021 is not entirely wiped out. I just don't have anything planned for it at this point, because we just don't know when we're going to be there. So, okay. Any other questions regarding the CERT program?
Yeah, Tony, can you just comment briefly on the uptake that we've seen on the COVID-19 offer to CERT and RACES members? Again, obviously that went off the rails a little bit. I take it.
The red highlighter set you off to see something?
Yeah, the all caps and red font kind of
might have meant something.
Yeah.
Didn't mean anything to me because I've already got my vaccinations. So it's like,
well, so bottom line is we're extremely limited in what we can provide. And as I said in the initial email, I'm not going to call it good news. I'm going to call it the potential for good news. We're subject to what supplies are available, when they're available, and people have to be there on standby to get them. And we only have so many allocated to our city. So it does have its challenges. And that's why I told people, please don't get excited. And if you have other opportunities, please go get your please go get your COVID stuff done. We had an initial group of, I think, 10 to 12 people go through. And right now, I called them my guinea pigs today. I said, you guys have, your potential future immunity, and your knowledge and CERT is an opportunity for you guys to serve the CERT program at sort of a higher level, meaning that if we have something happen, or we need a warming center staffing, cooling center staffing, power shutdown issue, we need staffing to facilitate at one of our locations. I said, you guys are the ones that will be called upon to do that, because it's a lesser risk bringing you in as you've been vaccinated What I do plan to do is send out an email to the program asking everyone who has been vaccinated independently to please let me know. And that way I can kind of get a call out list based of those individuals who privately got them, and then the 10 or 12 that I have in the pilot program as our core group right now to facilitate whatever needs that might come up in the community. So
Okay,
that's
cool.
where we're at with starting the COVIDs. So
Cool.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then the last thing I had on here was updates, announcements. I think I just generally put it on in case I had some random stuff that popped up that I wanted to talk about. So yeah, no, I think I'm good. I will pass it back to you, Juan.
All right, so next item there, I think it is the, okay,
Fire report.
Or from
yes.
fire.
Is that Chief Frawley?
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone
Good
hear me?
evening. Yes.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to brief the committee and the commission and give the fire update tonight. For those that haven't had a chance to meet before through the Zoom world, especially Rick Frawley, Deputy Fire Chief with the fire department in charge of operations. I have a couple of items to discuss tonight. The first item is to kind of give you a brief update on the status of the COVID-19 pandemic and our initiatives in the city and in the fire department, and to kind of give you a sense of the direction that came out of City Council this past Tuesday. So obviously, we're at a year of our community journey with COVID-19 as a nation and weathering the storm. We've definitely taken some lessons learned from this exposure and this experience in terms of deploying resources to help the community. We stopped our community COVID testing back in early February. We were reaching a point where other testing opportunities were available in the community and through medical providers to provide that service. And more importantly, we wanted to pivot towards the ability to support vaccination. As Tony mentioned earlier in the conversation, we're getting some good traction and some good news relative to vaccine accessibility. It started out primarily through the public health department. They've been the gatekeepers, Santa Clara County Public Health, and we continue to work with them as our partner here in Santa Clara County. They're the primary go-to location for COVID vaccine access, although there are other third-party administrators like Blue Shield that has a contract with the state, and also vaccine that's accessible through other providers like Walgreens, CVS, and Kaiser. So there's a myriad of different access points for COVID vaccinations in the community. And with the city, however, our primary partner has been supporting Santa Clara County Public Health. There was a public safety vaccine clinic that was set up in late December, early January. And the goal and objective of that clinic was to support police, fire, emergency responders so that we could reinforce the ranks of our first responders. And that was a successful mission that was primarily coordinated by Santa Clara County Fire, although all the fire agencies within the region have been supporting that effort with personnel that have been working at that vaccination clinic. It was so successful that the county asked the fire departments to continue and ramp up. And that has expanded to support teachers within the last 3-4 weeks, as well as essential employees of cities that are first responders. Now we're, as Tony mentioned earlier, we're getting to a point where more supply is showing up. It is somewhat sporadic. So we'll get some resources when we need them, sometimes with very little notice, which can be challenging. But it gives us the opportunity to make sure that we continue down the tiering system that's been determined by the state and the county. And that's where disaster service workers, CERT team members are part of that team. So that's good news. As Tony mentioned earlier, though, the challenging part and the bad news is the supply or limited supply, and supply that will show up with very short notice for vaccinations. that has been a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge. The other part of that conversation we've been having with the county is trying to offer resources to reach out to the underserved members of our community in Milpitas to give them access to the vaccine. We know that obviously there's the vaccination centers that are set up at the fairgrounds that have been the primary location. There are other community centers that have been set up like Levi Stadium and very limited South Bay sites. We know that that works to a certain degree, but we also recognize and understand that there are members of our community that can't travel or don't have access to travel or have limitations. So to that end, we've come up with a draft plan that would dedicate 4 personnel off the fire engines and into a response unit. It's very similar to the mobile testing that we did for 9 months. And that unit would work in concert with Santa Clara County Public Health to get out to members of the community that can't travel. The good news with that is we're hoping to springboard off the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which, as you know, is a one-shot vaccine. So there's less of a challenge in terms of follow-up. And it also has improved storage restrictions over the Pfizer and Moderna. So we took that to council on Tuesday as a report back to council, got positive support from council to move forward with that. And we continue to leverage and push our plan to the county to get approval and to be part of their system. To kind of give you a sense of what happened in the past in terms of resources, the county's is a good partner. We work closely with them, but they're also very limited in their resources as well. And so to give you a frame of reference, when we stood up the COVID testing unit almost a year ago, it took about 6 weeks of working through the process to get approvals for the COVID testing unit. So this vaccine unit may take some time, but we're going to remain committed to it to make sure that that resource is available for the community. I think I've covered everything that comes to front of mind with COVID. Are there any questions about what I was just talking about with testing, the global picture and the COVID unit?
The only comment, I got my shots, their vaccination down at the Ritter Park voter registration area. And,
that's great.
Because they could handle, once you got through the line, it was quick. Sometimes it lines up because everybody gets there early, sort of thing. But that was about the only thing that.
Yeah, I think the only challenge that we've had a little bit, and it seems to be not just local to Milpitas, but I think it's something that's recognized throughout the vaccination world, if you will, here in the United States, has been the registration piece and the paperwork piece, and the online registration component. It makes sense with technology to have that, so you can register through a dedicated link for a specific day, but it doesn't always go as smoothly as we would like, and I think sometimes that can be a little bit of a challenge. And I do see that as a potential challenge for members of the community that aren't as tech savvy or don't have as easy access to technology as some folks. So that to me, I think is the only kind of pitfall I see with the workflow on it.
Yeah, it's almost like if you could be mobile and just set up, in an area, broadcast it ahead of time, and then plan on, a certain amount that you can hand out, vaccinate at that point in time, and that's how you handle it, something like that. At least from the fire department standpoint, or something like that.
One of the pieces that came up in Tuesday's council meeting that I have to add to our plan, because my plan is it's a complete plan, but it's until we get approval from the county, it's still, I call it a draft. But we want to try and reach out to other faith-based groups in the community to make sure that we not only communicate but also identify potential residents that might need the vaccine, and also locations. So that's one piece that came out of the council meeting. And then we're also going to potentially, if the county will buy off on it, try and see if we can work with medical professionals that are in the community so we can train them to be part of the vaccination team. But that's an ask that still needs to work its way through the county question and answer process.
Yeah, I know that we got 2 schools that my church does a kids club with, and they're Title I schools, and those are probably kind of the arena of, what you guys are looking for, at least a part of it.
Well, and once as we go down this journey, I'll work with Tony to reach out to the commission to see if to ask some of those questions to see because the commission has its finger on the pulse of what's happening out there, and that's good information to put into the plan.
Yeah.
And that's why I always seem to I support having an open book analysis, if you will, of what's available in the community for locations and for resources, and for those that are potentially in greater need of having access to the vaccine.
Yeah, because some of those families, not all, but some of the families have several generations living in one place, and usually you've got the elder one that's the one that's going to be most vulnerable to it. Not so much the kids and all that sort of stuff, but they bring it home, and and one of the prayer requests from one of the kids, just for FYI, was he was concerned that his mother's going to die. They reached out and found out that he was just worried she was going to get COVID-19 and die from it. She is not anywhere close to it, but it's the worry side of it. That's some of the stuff we hear.
And we definitely can't discount the stress and the concerns that people have. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I think this group is keenly aware of the challenges that we see in society in general as we all navigate through this challenge of COVID. On a positive note, aside from the COVID world, to give you some updates on what's happening in the fire department, we have good progress with the rebuild of Fire Station 2. So that's progressing fairly well. The contractor is out there working on foundation work, and I'm not sure if Fanny's still on the call or not, but
yeah.
I got to tip my hat to City Engineering. Steve Erickson and Lee Hawk are the primary project managers, and they're doing a stand-up job with helping us navigate that. So we're still looking at the first or second quarter of next year. So we're still looking a year away. And so the crews are really excited about that. And it's good to see something positive in the midst of COVID. The other piece which was really nice that I'm really particularly proud of, is we purchased through funds that we received from the state for all our wildland deployments last year, partially. We purchased 2 new wildland Type 5 wildland apparatus, and so that I'm really excited about, because we've had some really interesting calls. We in the last couple of years, starting with the country fire 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, actually in 2017, and then obviously the SCU complex last year. As Joe can attest to, with our partnership with Spring Valley, it's been a pretty epic last 3 or 4 years up in the hills in terms of wildland challenges. So these 2 new apparatus will be here a year from now. So they won't be here by this summer, but they'll be here in March of next year. And there are 2 Type 5s being built in Texas. They're by a company called Skeeter, and they're Dodge 2500 chassis with 400-gallon tanks and 150 GPM pumps. And having the same piece of equipment at Station 2 and Station 3 will be really a huge bonus for our response to the hillside and into the wildland urban interface. And again, the really awesome thing that I appreciate is the funding for one of those vehicles came back as from the vehicle and administrative fees from last year's wildland deployments. So that was a big budget win. And other than that, we're starting to kind of navigate into the post-COVID world a little bit. Tony was talking earlier about training. we're navigating ways that we can, kind of get into the orange tier, and ways that we can kind of return a little bit of sense of connection for training and for our day-to-day operations. So we're pretty excited about that. And I'm open to any questions.
So, excuse me, the type 5s that the department's getting, Chief, are those brand new apparatus, or are those replacing existing apparatus?
So they're going to replace the 2 wildland apparatus, one at Station 2 and one at Station 3. So it'll essentially replace the Type 3 that's at Station 2. Although, because we're in a temporary station at Station 2, we've moved that Type 3, that 387 has been moved up to Station 3 just temporarily. So it'll replace that Type 3, and then the Type 5 that's at Station 3, that one will become basically the dedicated reserve wildland unit. One of the pieces that our deputy city manager, Walter Rossman, was our finance director, and he's been a great advocate because he supports the public safety arena. We report with PD up to Deputy City Manager Rossman. And one of the pieces we talk about a lot in our fleet is something we want to try and avoid, which is called fleet creep. So firefighters are very ingenious. We like to keep things, and sometimes we like to keep things longer than we probably should, but we like having that extra tool in the toolbox. And so we're trying to be good stewards and not get into the we're just going to keep this forever game. And so we will be surplusing off, and if Spring Valley is interested, we definitely want to partner with Spring Valley like we did last go around, and support the needs up on the hillside.
Okay, I'll float that to Chief Hackey when I see him this weekend.
Oh, that'd be greght.
And, yeah.
Hey, you just heard OES's budget. I might want some axes. Kick down my way.
Some pry bars and a few things like that.
Make it work.
Backboard, and
Thank you, Chief Raleigh.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Chief Frawley,
Sure.
for the reports. Any other questions for Chief Frawley? All right, moving on to law report. Chief Hernandez?
Hang on one second. Let me make sure I promote him up. Okay, Chief Hernandez, are you? Captain Morales and Chief Hernandez are joining us this evening. I don't know who's going to be providing the presentation to us, but I wanted to allow both of you guys to come off of mute and become part of the panel now.
Hey,
Appreciate
Tony,
that.
it's Frank. I'll be chatting about PD. First off, good evening, Chair Leanne, commissioners. My name is Frank Morales. I am currently a captain with the police department, and I oversee our field services division. For some reason, I can't do video, so I apologize. I don't see that option on my screen. Then tonight, I'm here to discuss our draft policy, which you have received, related to the wearing of facial hair by our officers, and that can be found in our.
Oh, hang on, Frank. Give me 1 minute. Sorry. I just figured out how to promote you to panelist so you can go on camera.
Oh,
But I'm
perfect.
not.
Thank you.
Can you do it now? I was telling Ron, I was like, please don't leave me, Ron. Please do the IT. I can't handle it. But I did
Yep,
it.
perfect. Thank you. Well, I'm glad you guys can all see me. I don't know if I got cut off there or not, but this evening I'm here to discuss our facial hair draft policy, which you all should have a copy of. This draft policy is found in our personal appearance standards of our Milpitas Police Manual. To give you a little bit of background on this, it's my understanding that maybe close to a year ago, we presented this to your commission. And since then, we've still been evaluating the wearing of facial hair by our officers. More recently, we had one of our officers make the request to wear facial hair for religious purposes, and that allowed us to accelerate the review of this draft policy.
Frank,
Yes.
I'm sorry. If I can hold 1 minute, I'm going to attempt promoting Chief Hernandez, and I don't want to cut you off and screw that up.
I was gonna cut him and ask Tony to move Chief.
I'm like,
over.
let me see if I can do this. Oh, I got him in. They're
Okay.
going to promote me to IT.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Chief Hernandez should be in here now. You good, Chief? Oh,
Hey.
there we go.
There you go.
I thought
All
that
right,
was
Frank.
your way. I thought that was your way of telling me I have a better face for radio.
Oh, all right. Sorry to interrupt you, Frank. Please go ahead.
No, that's okay. So we just wanted to let you guys know a couple of the things that we did while reviewing this policy, some of the considerations that we took into account. Obviously, you're all aware that officers at times may be required to wear gas masks, helmets, and that was a legitimate concern for us. We wanted to make sure that we can maintain the safety of our officers. So we've done some research, some testing with officers with facial hair and the donning of face masks. And we learned that they can do it safely and maintain that level of protection even with the facial hair. Our draft policy is pretty restrictive on the type of facial hair that an officer can have. It's basically, if they're wearing a beard, it's got to be with a mustache. It's got to be symmetrical and not exceed 3/8 of an inch in length. And most importantly, it can't interfere with the wearing of any safety equipment. So we've also vetted the use of N95 masks to make sure that, especially in this COVID environment, that our staff wouldn't be at risk should they wear facial hair. Currently, that's where we're at with this draft policy. This evening, I'm here just to hear any questions, any input for or against the potential implementation of this policy. So if there are any questions, I'd love to hear them.
So we actually did not receive the policy itself. So yeah, I was just informed that we were going to have a presentation on it. So I don't actually have the policy itself. It's something, if you guys would like to distribute to us, and if anyone has questions, we can bring you back in May with questions on that, or whoever, Sergeant Speckenhoy, or whoever's going to be running the meeting that night. But yeah, we can follow up on that one.
Yeah, my apologies. I wasn't aware that it didn't make it to you guys. Yeah, however you prefer to handle that. If you, we can get you a copy of it, obviously, and then I would love to come back and address any concerns there maybe.
Okay. No, that sounds good.
Yeah, because I think last time he said that whoever was presenting or going to present only talked about the one and said something like the other one was still in process or something like that.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, Dawn, I wasn't at that meeting, but I think we talked about tattoos maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was the tattoos and facial hair, I think, the goatees we talked about, I think.
okay, so we're not going to open it up to goatees. It'd have to be a full beard. But do you guys have any concerns about the professionalism or the professional look of it? I think that was kind of the concern with the tattoos. Also, is that it's really not the traditional police look. And same thing with beards. There are a couple agencies in Santa Clara County that authorize it. Palo Alto, Gilroy, for example. But from your guys' perspective, is there any, even without seeing the policy, is there anything that you have concerns about that that we should be aware of?
Well, I certainly wouldn't be one to voice an opposition.
Yeah, well, you're going to have problems with the mask.
I mean, if it's not on your face, on your neck, your forehead where it's so visible, if it's on your arms, and if it's on a hot summer, you're wearing short sleeve, it shows. To me, I think it's fine.
So the tattoos were already approved. That happened a few months back. This one's more specific to the beards. I don't know if there's if you guys have an opinion about that. Traditionally, we've been very, very strict as a police department in our facial hair policy, and we only allowed a mustache. It could not go beyond the corner of the mouth. But we do have some staff that are interested for various reasons to wear their beards. You know, when we support, I don't know if you remember in November, we supported the Movember movement, and it's where men grow facial hair in support of men cancer and things. And so that really, there was a lot of interest in that from our staff, and it kind of sparked that conversation again. So we started having that conversation last time we were here. I think it was late last year, maybe September, October, whatever it was. And then we had an ask, like Frank said, from an employee that wants to do it for religious purposes, which we'll honor that regardless of the policy. But we also know that there's an interest from the other officers. So if it's something that we could just address all at one time, then I'd rather just address it all at one time.
You know, just with anything else, as long as it's, you know, the officers keep it up and keep it groomed, I don't see a problem with that. I know, like, just speaking to a couple of the county parks rangers, you know, we have a working relationship with. They say the same thing. For a long time, the parks department was no facial hair other than the mustache, and then they, you know, they have allowed their rangers to grow beards, but they still have a grooming standard as to how they have to keep it up. So
Right.
Could be a fire hazard. Get that big bushy thing out there and whoop.
Yeah, but I heard Rick's got a bunch of trucks coming, so he can put us out pretty quick.
Nice.
Okay, so we appreciate that feedback, and we will send you through email the policy. There's not a lot to it. It's short and sweet, and really just defines what's acceptable and what's not. And so any feedback that you guys have for us after seeing it, we'd be happy to hear it. In other updates, we launched a new initiative through Police Community Relations where there's some more virtual engagement with our youth. They're playing Memory, and they're also going to be launching some other games. It's been very well received. The kids are having a great job at beating us at every game. They have amazing memories. So we're having a lot of fun with our kids that are at home over Zoom. We also, you're probably aware of a lot of the Asian hate crime that's circulating in the media and the concerns that surround Asian hate crime. Myself, Frank, my other captains, John and Steve, along with some lieutenants, we reached out to our faith-based organizations last week, and I sent a letter to them that explains that we're aware of the issue, that we looked at our data going back 5 years. And if I go back even further, I'm sure that this will also hold true. We hadn't had any reported hate crime incidents in the city of Milpitas in the 5 years that we looked. I also put in the letter that we were spending more time in our predominantly Asian shopping centers, our Ranch 99, Old First Center, some of these areas where they're heavily populated with our Asian community members, and we have a greater presence in those areas. We also talked about in that letter how to report incidents and making them aware, the community aware of the options that they have, whether it call 911, letting them know that we have translators available to us, letting them know that we have officers that speak multiple languages and we're able to provide service in multiple languages. And then also about text 911, which I think you guys might be familiar with that as well. Text 911 is pretty neat, and Rapid Deploy, which is a portion of that, allows our dispatchers to receive text messages in other languages. They receive them in English, they reply in English, and the text message is sent back to the user in whatever language is programmed in their phone. So if I, on my cell phone, initiate text 911 and I have a phone that's set to Spanish, the dispatcher is seeing it in English, they reply in English, but when it comes back to my phone, because the setting in my phone is Spanish, I see it in Spanish, which enables immediate communication, which I think is pretty amazing. Rapid Deploy is in 70 different languages. And so that's part of our letter as well. One thing that I did find very interesting is we spent some time at Ranch 99 this week on Monday, and the majority of the business owners, with the exception of only a couple, were not even aware of what's happening in some of the areas around us. And so I'd asked them about, do they pay attention to the news? And they don't. They're not watching our ABC and NBC and these video newses. And so the next step that we're going to do is reach out to some of our Asian newspaper publications. I have the letter that we delivered and that I wrote to the community. It's translated in Chinese and Vietnamese and Korean. So we're going to be looking to other sources of media that may be more viewed by that demographic to try to get our message out a little bit better. But I was really happy to hear from them. The majority of them, they didn't have fear in Milpitas. They said they felt very, very safe in Milpitas. Some of them described seeing our officers in the shopping centers on a regular basis. And so we were really proud and happy to get that feedback from the community. I'd be interested in your feedback also. If you guys think that there's something that we need to do to provide better service to the community, or a way to reach out to those demographics in a better way, then we're absolutely happy to hear that feedback as well.
I know our church, my church anyway, is multicultural, and we have a fairly high Asian content of congregation, although not coming to church up until this last Sunday when we had our first live. But I haven't heard anything there, but I can at least post back, at least email back to someone there to say, hey, are we seeing or hearing any issues of any sort that they might bring to someone in the church or something like that, as a situational type thing. Maybe like what we call life groups, where they might, and we do ESL also, so we could have someone there kind of keep an ear open.
Yeah, and Chief, with the Asian business owners here in Milpitas, not so much in San Jose, because San Jose, there's a larger Vietnamese population, and they have TV shows, radio that's constantly on announcing news every day. But with Milpitas, they don't read the news. They're busy working from morning to night, so they are unaware of events that's out there. I think it will be great with the idea of having different languages, newsletters out to our community, just to make them aware of the situation out there in the world, and have them be on the lookout for problems.
Yeah, I agree. Our objective, it's not over yet. We're going to try and hit all the businesses that we can. I intended on going to some today as well, and I just wasn't able to because the day took a hold of me really quickly with some events that happened. But we're going to continue making those contacts. And if I'm not doing it personally, it's going to be through my captains and through our patrol officers. And we're going to have the letters available. Like I said, we have English, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Korean available now. And we'll get that message out there. And I think one of the really important pieces is to get the information on how to contact us. I'm worried that there might be some reluctance to contact the police because of the language barrier, or maybe there's some uncertainty on how to contact us. And so I want to make sure that we clarify that. We were asked by one of the religious institutions to put out some more information about what constitutes a hate crime, because there is some misconceptions that if the victim is a particular race, or maybe they have sexual orientation or whatever, and they're assaulted or something, it's an automatic hate crime. And that's really not the case. What has to happen is that the crime that was committed has to be motivated by their bias or hate for that person. So just because somebody is of an ethnicity, or because of their sexual orientation or their gender, whatever it may be, it may not automatically be a hate crime. And so there is an educational component there. And then the other piece of it is you see incidents happen where somebody uses a racial slur. Well, as inappropriate as that is, it may not meet the other threshold of a crime. So there's two different pieces to it. And so maybe getting some education on what actually constitutes a hate crime might be important. And then also the other piece of it is making sure that people feel comfortable in reporting those things. And if there is silence, that we break that silence and that we deal with it appropriately.
I guess would texting, texting 911 with their concern, because there's a translator in the middle, would that be a better option? I know we don't want to just have them texting you all the time for just general kind of, whatever, more of an issue of I need help now. But we need something like that to where they can feel it, what they state gets to the right person and gets them a response back at some point in time, whether it's a crime issue or it's just, I've seen this happen to my friend or family or something like that. What do I do?
So we actually have, the answer to that is yes and no. And the reason I say that is because there is a delay in texting. So if you have an emergency, you're sitting there, with your thumbs trying to spell out what's going on, there's
Sure.
a delay in that process.
Yep.
Text to 911 was really designed for those situations where you can't talk. Maybe somebody has broken into your house while you're home and you're hiding in your closet and you don't want them to hear you on the phone. And so you're texting. It's those types of situations. Maybe you're unable to speak for whatever reason, you can text it. We also have translators available through our 911 center. We use AT&T language line. As long as you can tell us what language you speak, we will get you a translator pretty much immediately. There have been times, where I was a dispatcher in the past. I don't know if you guys know that about me, but there have been times where we take calls and the person, we don't know what they're saying. We're trying to identify the language and we don't know. And AT&T's translators are pretty good. We get them on the line and they have a tendency to pick up on certain dialects or certain things that are being said. And they say, oh, you need a Mandarin translator, or you whatever.
Kind
And
of
so,
the words they use.
right. And so we do rely on those resources. And if somebody was to call 911 and we were to use the AT&T language line as the translators, that would be ideal, better than texting. But
Okay.
texting is better if we don't know what the language is. So it's kind of like, it's hard to say which one's better over the other one. They both have a purpose.
Yeah. And just, because I was kind of concerned about saying, well, if you got an issue, not an emergency type of an issue, would be the text 911 be a good way, or can they just try calling and know that they've got a translator in there that can help?
Right. No, I understand that. And maybe there's an opportunity here to look into see how we can expand that. Maybe there's another resource where we can use the same technology. It's just not on the emergency side. Maybe you have that, after action situation where it's not an immediate emergency, but we need to communicate. That's something that we're going to have to look into.
Well, like a non-emergency number that you can call versus the emergency number.
Right.
If you had a text number for that kind of equivalency, that might be an approach too.
Right. No, I understand that. Our translators are available even to our front desk clerk. So if you have somebody that calls in and there's a language barrier there, the AT&T language line, I as a police officer can call, use our requester code and get a translator. When we have officers that need to communicate with the public while they're taking a report out on the street, they use that same service. So if we don't have an officer in house that speaks that language or one that's on duty at the time, we still have immediate access to translators to the AT&T language line that we have.
Okay.
Great. I would love to see one of the Vietnamese translator piece of yours that you sent out so that I can communicate to the Chinese and Vietnamese community here in Milpitas and San Jose. Do you know if San Jose has the same texting policy and translating available?
I do not know, but the entire state of California will have it. We're just a little bit ahead of the curve. So that technology, there's a whole, I forget, it escapes me right now what the project or the initiative is for the entire state. The Next Gen 911, that's what it's called. The Next Gen 911 project, which is going to kind of redefine and update all of our 911 centers throughout the state. It's going to have that capability. We have it now because we went to it early and we pay for that service now because we saw it to be a community benefit, but everybody will have it eventually.
Yeah, this is a fairly complex city as far as nationalities.
Yeah, for us, just the sheer amount of diversity that's in the city, it was the right thing to do.
All right, any other questions for Chief?
Thank you guys for having us. I always like coming here. I think it's always a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Captain Morales.
Thank you, Captain Morales.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time.
I do not see that Councilmember Dominguez has joined us, so I don't know if there's anything left at this point for the agenda. We can.
No, that's the last item on the agenda.
The motion to adjourn.
I do need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Paul.
A second.
All right. Anybody gonna say nay? All right. Everyone have a great evening. Adjourn to
Thank you so
8:25.
much. All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you, everyone. Good
Night.
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 Good night, Paul.
Guys, take care.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. Enjoy your night.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.